Thank you very much, Watanabe-san, and I thank you also, the president of RETI, for giving me such opportunity. I am very honored to be here, and indeed I will represent, I would say, the automotive supplier industry. We are also present in Japan, and we supply Japanese customers. It's very important to remind, as much as we are a global player, and greening through particularly electrification, the overall, I would say, customers around the world. So you will see that my presentation is very much, I would say, comparing to the previous presentation, very much an illustration of how a company engaged in green growth and in sustainability is actually operating to achieve this carbon neutrality. So first of all, what is interesting to notice for us is that indeed we are an automotive supplier that believed in green growth, not as from now, but already from 10 years ago. Our chairman and CEO, Jacques Aschenbroich, believed already when he took his job in 2009 that the products, the solutions that an automotive supplier like Valeo would bring to the market would be multiplied by 20 in this just past decade, between 2009 up to here 2019, or if I take even what is going on the last year and the first results. So you see that what is green as solutions for us has been really this past decade transformation. And you see that even from last year in the electric vehicle, it has been a momentum. Indeed, as you have seen in many statistics, the electric vehicle have been skyrocketing everywhere in the world, particularly in Europe, and particularly in Asia, in China and Japan. And obviously for a company like ours, it's very promising because we are engaged in powertrain and internal systems in both low voltage, as here you see one illustration with the 48 volt, as much as the high voltage for a bigger sedan. But we're also there, as I was saying, with thermal, with inverters and battery cooling. So indeed, we believe that already this past decade was an important decade to prepare the transformation. And as you see here, with all what we do in the world, we are either in the safe business, that is to say, what is related to automation, driving assistance, and ADAS in active safety in our sector. But overall, we are bringing green products all over wherever we can. And these are the proportions you see in whatever business group you are, in thermal devices systems, which concerns powertrain thermal, but also climate control, powertrain systems, comfort and driving assistance, and visibility, which are including both the wiping systems, the wiping shades and motors blades, and the lighting systems, front and rear. And all these solutions also in aftermarket. And you see that the importance of a supplier to address this kind of markets, to contribute to the reduction of CO2, is to be always a leader in the market, either to be a number one or a number two, because otherwise it's very difficult to survive. And I will bring here 3 examples of solution, since I'm presenting and I have the honor and the duty to do this in front of the prestigious RIETI, 3 examples of solution that are largely sold to Japanese customers in Japan, but also in the rest of the world. And I will give 3 examples, one in powertrain, one in thermal management, one in lighting. So indeed, you see that this example of powertrain electrification has been, I would say, interesting because of the affordability of the price, and that as it has had a real success on I would say, the market, with the first launch of start of production already more than 10 years ago, and it's already equipping 3.5 million cars equipped. And this has produced 3% of fuel saving. There is also this other example of a thermal management system about, bringing a thermal efficiency around the powertrain. And also this has been extremely important because as much as we are introducing electric vehicle devices, we need to master the thermal control of the vehicle if we want to bring the best efficiency for the car, the electric car, the electric vehicle. So indeed, all those systems around thermal have been extremely important, and this has been also one of our success, and particularly for Japanese market. And here also you see that since we are leader in lighting, we also pushed some solution to spare and optimize the watts and indeed to achieve the minimum electric consumption for a low beam in the electric vehicle. So this shows to you that the burden, and I would say the great research power of an automotive supplier, is to work for any kind of auxiliary, including lighting devices, where we can save consumption. We can absolutely optimize what is the footprint of gram per CO2 of kilometer, whether it is here as it might seem modest as 1 gram of CO2 per kilometer. But this, with kilometers accumulated, makes also an interesting saving. And here I show again what we are doing with the flex heater to optimize the energy consumption, particularly in winter, since I took this because I'm presenting March the 2nd and it's winter, and I hope soon Japan will have a great spring, we know, with the blossoming in trees. But as you know, in Europe, we still had a bit of a cold not so long ago. And indeed, you know, the first generation of electrical vehicle had the burden that the electricity consumption was being sucked away by the thermal systems. And here we have the solution to optimize the use phase. So this decarbonization, as I can show, was a bit of a concentrated portfolio that I show you in products. But mainly, and I liked what my predecessors that are distinguished scholars in research showed, we also need to do them in processes. And indeed, we want to claim that sustainability is part of VALEO'S DNA. And we need to do it not only in our operations as a role model, where you see that we are getting more certification of ISO 50001 on energy savings in each of our factories, but also in involving all the supply chain. I remember for you that a supplier like Valeo, but it would be the same case for Denso, for many other of our competitors, is to have thousands of suppliers in which we need to share the same, I would say, sustainability strategy overall the supply chain. And last but not least, environment questions are not just about CO2, we need to improve the ecosystem, the circular economy that should be really at the core of each of us in our strategy. And indeed, the recycling, the reducing when it comes to rare earth, the remanufacturing, particularly for the aftermarket, or the retrofitting also, if it can be done, is indeed a strategy that all actors like us, among suppliers and in the auto sector, should do, because this is complementary to reducing the CO2 footprint. And indeed, I like to say, and I post here what has been the declaration of many leaders of the world. We're very happy that in the US, there will be, since the arrival of the new administration, clearly by joining the COP21 Paris agreements, also a new push coming from the other side for you of the Pacific and for us in Europe of the Atlantic. But indeed, we are all engaged in this carbon neutrality, whether it will take a little more of an extra decade when it comes to China. But for Japan, US, and Europe, indeed, the achievement is 2050. So for a company like ours that is roughly around, 17 billion euros turnover with 110,000 people around the world, with nearly 200 industrial sites, indeed, what is very important is to reduce the total carbon footprint. And what I show you at the beginning with our examples of portfolio, this is around the downstream, the use phase. And you see that here we really we took the 2019 figures because 2020, because of the pandemic, they were not so, I would say, relevant. But here is what we are accumulating, 39 megatons. The processes around direct emissions and purchase energy are much limited compared to our products. It's a little more than 1 megaton, 0.1, all put together. But you see that the supply chain, what we buy from our suppliers, it's already a significant amount. So from these figures, to commit step by step with a first step in 2030 before reaching carbon neutrality in 2050, we really need to downsize enormously our responsibilities for the different scope. So you see that for the processes, we are going to engage ourselves on a minus 75% of the equivalent megatons of CO2. So to reduce them drastically by energy purchase and direct emissions out of our factories. We will do a big effort as well, and believe me that reducing minus 15% on the overall supply chain, it is a huge work, because you need to convince all those thousands of different suppliers, different commodities. You have their metal, you have their electronics, that we need to work together to reduce CO2. And then obviously where we do have a big lever, it's on the downstream of the product, because there not only it's the work to reduce our solutions by at least 15% to meet what are the science-based targets that are requiring that at minima, but also is to include the avoidance of the emissions in the use phase. Basically, it is thanks to company suppliers like us that our customers, the vehicle manufacturers, are succeeding in introducing final vehicles that avoid subsequently emissions. And this is why we are really considering ourselves that we are part of a new mobility scenario. So first of all, and here I will bring some ideas also that are happening in the market. First of all, the electrification is indeed growing everywhere in the world, with a particular accent in Europe and in Asia. Clearly, you see here on the classification on electrification, the size of conventional vehicles that are reducing more and more in the world, that hybrid electrical vehicles, plug-in hybrid electrical vehicles, and full battery electrical vehicles are growing percentage in Europe and also in the rest of the world. But what is more interesting, I think, as much as we see and we reckon that in many cities, cars won't be the only option of mobility, this next decade will make explode the different type of mobility of vehicles: kick scooters, e-bikes, electric two-scooters, electric three-wheelers. Let me remind you, for example, in India, where the Japanese market is extremely important also there. If you want to electrify India, you need to with the rickshaws, with the three-wheelers. The first volume of vehicles sold in what will become in 15 years the largest country in the world by demography is indeed the tuk-tuk, the three-wheelers. There are more than 40 million three-wheelers sold per year. The first element of cars and the three-wheelers is just around 2 or 3 million vehicles sold. So you see that this kind of urbanization will drive new sorts of electric micromobility. This is why we believe that a supplier, a technology supplier that invests an enormous amount of R&D to electrification is indeed, I would say, an element that is bringing proactively the transformation of a green mobility at scale. Right. It is based on ecosystem vision of mobility, and also, as I showed you at the beginning, with some product portfolio that are electrifying. So this is really what we believe, and I thank you for the attention, and I will stop here. Thank you very much.